Hey everybody, Segalacious back here again with another Sega video. You know, Sega may not be that relevant anymore, much less the Sega Saturn, but even though the memory of this system may have left the minds of most of the gaming world, there are still a lot of dedicated enthusiasts who still recall and appreciate what Sega had to offer back in its heyday. I'd like to think that I'm one of those few but faithful, and that's why I really enjoy making videos about Sega's classic games and systems. However, even among fans of the Sega Saturn, I feel like most people remember the Sega mostly for its wealth of fighting games. And honestly, I can't blame anyone for doing so, since the Saturn D-pad is so responsive and comfortable that the Sega Saturn controller is possibly the best fighting game controller outside of an arcade stick ever made. But due to this fact, I think that another genre is sometimes unfairly left out of the spotlight. To help promote more representation of Sega Saturn's racing games, I've made a list of my top 5 best racing games on the Sega Saturn. It's only my opinion though, but unfortunately, when I went to record this video, I discovered that my RGB SCART to HDMI converter box stopped playing nicely with my Elgato game capture device. Now it will only output in 800 by 600 resolution, so I'll have to go back to composite just for now. I hope you will forgive the lesser video quality of this entry, and please enjoy the games in my video. Thank you for your understanding.
Manx TT Superbike.
Manx TT Superbike was an intensely popular arcade title in the United Kingdom that launched in 1995. It was later ported over to the Sega Saturn and PC in 1997. The arcade version of this title was highly praised for its advanced graphics and realistic controls that required the player to use body weight to steer the bike in-game. On the Saturn port, the graphics remain impressive. There is a bit of a learning curve when it comes to handling the bike though, as the turning appears to be progressive rather than a steady radial arc. This can cause a fair bit of overcorrecting and flying into walls. However, the controls are significantly improved when using the Saturn 3D controller's analog thumbstick. Manx TT also has an excellent soundtrack. You can actually put the disc in your CD player and listen to the entire OST. Careening around tight corners is a blast once you get the hang of it. I feel that Manx TT Superbike was trying to be the Daytona USA of arcade motorcycle games. While it ultimately falls short of this aspiration, it wasn't far off the mark. That's why it takes the number 5 spot.
Please select the race mode. Please select the bike. Please select manual or automatic transmission.
Next up is Sonic R. Wait. I know, it's not a good game. In fact, it's a terrible game that is physically painful to play and even more frustrating. Manx TT Superbike is a better game than Sonic R, okay? I admit that. But I feel that Sonic R is such a unique and memorable game that it deserves the number 4 spot despite not being a good game. Let's get the obvious negatives out of the way first. The controls are awful. You have to constantly hold up on the D-pad to accelerate, making turning difficult enough, but it gets even worse because the sluggish turning controls make you feel like your character is wading through molasses at all times. Also, the dancey Europop music doesn't seem to fit the racing format of this game at all, making the game's soundtrack bizarrely contrast with the gameplay. The combination of all these factors makes you feel like you're in some kind of a sick joke. But the thing is that this game is so bad that it's actually kind of funny. After a while, you start to enjoy the game ironically, in the same way that you might enjoy a bad movie like The Room or Samurai Cop. Once you reach this point, you start to notice the redeeming qualities of this game. The visuals and graphics are very impressive. It makes me wish I had included it in my top 5 best looking Sega Saturn games video. Each track is unique and interestingly designed with hidden secrets and alternate paths around almost every corner. There are collectibles, hidden tracks, and hidden characters that provide for some of the most replayability I've ever seen in a Sega Saturn game. In addition to being an impressive piece of technical wizardry, this game also has historical significance as it is the first ever truly 3D Sonic game and the only original Sonic game for the Sega Saturn. All of these factors combine to make this game a peculiar and memorable experience that shouldn't be passed up. It's one of those games that you hate so much that you kind of love it. It's a very strange thing to recommend for me, but I guess I actually like this game even though it really is terrible. Coming in at number 3 is a game that I originally played on the PC before playing on the Saturn. This version of Road Rash is a remake of the original Sega Genesis version for CD-based consoles like the PlayStation, 3DO, Sega CD, Sega Saturn, and Windows 95. Which of all these is the definitive version is still a very passionately debated topic, with most people siding either with the 3DO or PC versions. Between the PlayStation and Saturn versions, it's a bit of a toss-up. The PlayStation has higher resolution, while the Saturn has a smoother frame rate. The PlayStation has a better draw distance, while the Saturn boasts sharper textures. However, no matter which version you choose to be your personal favorite, there is no denying that Road Rash for the Saturn is an excellent version that will not disappoint. Road Rash ranks as highly as it does purely on the fun factor of the gameplay. Racing along on your bike, punching and kicking other competitors, police, and running over the occasional pedestrian makes for an exhilarating and often hilarious experience. Be careful though. If you biff it while going too fast, you can get launched a ridiculously long ways away from your motorcycle, and you'll have no choice but to jog the whole way back while trying to dodge oncoming traffic. I highly recommend this game. There is a ton of replayability, bike upgrades, weapons, and a variety of racing locations. The edgy grunge soundtrack and FMVs would make owning this game worthwhile as a novelty alone, but the addictive gameplay makes this one a must-own, and a terrific racing game for the Sega Saturn. Daytona USA was originally a critically acclaimed arcade racer released in 1993 that was ported to the Sega Saturn in 1995. While the Saturn version is significantly inferior to its arcade counterpart, being reduced to 20 frames per second as opposed to the arcade original's 60 frames, as well as suffering from a reduced draw distance resulting in a lot more pop-in, the Saturn version, despite all of this, is still a very well put together port and one of the most fun and iconic racing games ever made. Although there are only a few tracks and a fairly tiny roster of vehicles to choose from, the controls work quite well, and there is a terrific sense of momentum that keeps your heart pounding as you race around the curves of each track. Perhaps most iconic of all is the infectiously catchy soundtrack performed by vocalist Takenobu Mitsuyoshi. The Saturn version of the Daytona USA soundtrack is distinctive as it was recorded on the Yamaha sound chip, and the instruments and vocals for each song were actually re-recorded specifically for the Saturn version. I remember driving my little brother crazy by replaying this game over and over, trying to get first place on each track, causing him to become very jaded by Mitsuyoshi's soulful crooning. He still gets annoyed by this soundtrack to this day, A fun fact about this game is that if you get first place on each track, you can unlock a playable horse as an alternate vehicle. It's really funny to have to choose between a manual and automatic transmission horse. If you are like me and not good enough to unlock the horse by beating the game properly, you can unlock the horse in the title screen by holding diagonally left and up on the D-pad, while simultaneously holding down A, B, X, Z, and start. This game is incredibly common on the Saturn, and it's one of the best games for the system around. It was released on the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live in 2011, so take this game out for a spin. Just be careful not to melt your tires.
Perfect, you'll melt the tire.
You placed 16th.
Taking my number one spot is Sega Rally Championship. This should come as no surprise, since not only is this game easily the best racing game on the Sega Saturn, but it is also considered in many circles to be one of the best games of all time. Yet another port of an arcade title. The Saturn version retains the most crucial and influential aspects of Sega Rally, being the integration of different racing surfaces with unique dynamic friction properties that affect the handling and gameplay of your vehicle accordingly. This means that your car will handle differently on muddy, gravel, and asphalt surfaces, which was an unprecedented element of racing realism at the time. The soundtrack of the original arcade version was composed by our good friend Takanobu Mitsuyoshi, and while the Saturn port also included songs by an additional composer with an even more difficult to pronounce name, much of Mitsuyoshi's influence is still present in this version of the game. While there may not be much in the way of unlockable vehicles or hidden tracks in Sega Rally, the gameplay and controls are some of the best I have ever had the pleasure of experiencing. The near-perfect handling and excellently designed tracks will keep you on the edge of your seat and coming back for more. There is also a two-player mode that allows you to race with friends. I really cannot recommend this game enough and would even suggest going out and purchasing a Sega Saturn specifically just for this one game. When it comes to racing games from this era, it doesn't get any better than this. Alright, well that's it for my top 5 best racing games on the Sega Saturn. I hope you enjoyed the video. If I left any racing games that were your favorites for the Sega Saturn off of my list, please let me know in the comments below, because I would love to hear about it and try them out for myself. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to support me making more of these kinds of videos. And as always, take care and be safe.